Alex and Clara lived in a quiet suburb of Chicago, in a house that Clara called a starter home, though it seemed more like one for people who never really started. Alex, a man in his mid-30s with a receding hairline and a talent for avoiding conflict, made the daily trek to his middle management job at a company that sold printer ink. He was like a reliable, but dull beige sedan, steady, unremarkable, and always overlooked. On the other hand, Clara strutted around as if she'd just won a grand prize for being amazing. As a successful marketing professional, she came home bragging about her latest campaign wins, her tone dripping with the arrogance of someone who had already reached their peak, while Alex was still trying to figure out how to even get started. Their marriage didn't feel like a partnership. It was more like a slow-motion car crash, with better Wi-Fi. Alex would try to keep things calm, ironing his best shirt and nodding through Clara's rants about the visionless losers she worked with. But peace was a foreign concept to Clara. She'd toss her coat on the couch, kick off her heels like they were her enemies, and start criticizing Alex's job with a condescending tone, calling it cute in the most pathetic way. Alex would give her a tight-lipped smile, secretly dreaming of the day when he could accidentally lock her in the garage with her oversized ego. One evening, Clara walked in wearing a new $300 blazer. The "I'm better than you" message clearly stitched into it. Alex, sitting there nursing a beer in a faded polo that practically screamed, "I've given up," mustered up the courage to comment, "Looks nice. Maybe I could use a new shirt too." Clara smirked, adjusting her collar in the mirror. "Oh, honey," she said, her tone sharp, "you haven't earned an upgrade yet. Keep dreaming, printer boy." She walked off, leaving Alex to stare at his beer as if it might apologize for her. Deep inside, a tiny spark of resentment started to grow. This wasn't a marriage, it felt more like a sitcom, and Alex was ready to rewrite the script. He wasn't perfect, but Alex believed he deserved more than being Clara's personal punching bag. Recently, he had been trying hard to fix their broken marriage. One night, he made a lasagna that could have brought an Italian grandmother to tears with its gooey cheese and hopeful flavor. He even lit a candle, hoping to set a mood that was more than just, "I hate you," but the bills are paid. Clara walked in, buried in her phone, barely acknowledging the dinner he'd made. "Oh, cute," she sneered. "Did the little chef play house today?" Alex's smile twitched, but he tried to push through. "Thought we could watch a movie later," he suggested, his voice shaky. Clara rolled her eyes, as if his suggestion was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. "Pass. I've got a call with important people. You know, adults with ambition." That stung, but Alex shoveled some lasagna into his mouth and tried to ignore it. Later that night, while watching a rerun of The Office, because Jim and Pam at least had some decent banter, Alex overheard Clara laughing on the phone. Her voice was sweet and syrupy, not the usual harsh tone she reserved for him. "Oh, Trevor, you're hilarious," she cooed, and Alex's ears perked up. Trevor? The smooth-talking marketing guy with the shiny Tesla and teeth that looked too perfect to trust? A seed of suspicion started to grow, but Alex stayed quiet, brooding in his own misery. The real punch came when he overheard Clara on speakerphone with her friend Lisa. "Alex." Clara laughed, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "He's not even a man, just a placeholder with a pulse." The words hit him like a cold slap. Alex froze, remote still in his hand, with Dwight Schrute's voice droning on in the background. His lasagna settled heavily in his stomach, but something darker brewed beneath it. Clara may have thought she was winning, but Alex was starting to keep track of the score, and he wasn't planning on losing. He'd always been the type to take life's punches with a beer and a shrug, but even a punching bag gets tired of being hit. By this point, his marriage to Clara felt less like a relationship and more like a reality show where he was the contestant nobody cared about. For weeks, he'd been stewing over her flirty chats with Trevor, the guy who probably ironed his socks. And that placeholder with a pulse comment still echoed in his mind like a jingle he couldn't escape. Something had to change, and Alex figured it was time for a serious conversation. Not a shouting match, those were Clara's thing, but a calm, "can we just not hate each other" kind of talk. Big mistake. It was a Friday night, one of those nights where the air smelled like rain and regret. Alex sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee that had been spiked with a little whiskey. He figured it would give him some courage. Clara stormed in late, her heels tapping loudly on the floor, her face already set in an annoyed expression. She'd had a tough day, she said, ranting about a client who didn't understand her vision. Alex saw his chance. "Clara," he started, his voice steady like someone walking a tightrope. "I've been thinking. We're not happy. Maybe we could." Happy? Clara interrupted, tossing her bag on the counter as if it had personally offended her. Oh, Alex, don't start with your sad sack routine. I'm tired of carrying both of us. Alex blinked, the whiskey in his chest burning a little more with each word. I just mean, he tried again, you're always tearing me down. It's not fair. Clara froze, then turned to him with a smirk that could have spoiled milk. She grabbed a bottle of wine, poured herself a glass with the flair of a villain in a soap opera, and took a long sip, watching him like he was a bug on her windshield. Fair? She laughed, her voice sharp enough to cut bread. You want to talk fair? Look at you, Alex, sitting there in your bargain bin life, acting like you're some big shot. Please. She leaned closer, the wine sloshing in her glass. Her voice dropped to a venomous purr. Little man? Tiny performance. That's you in a nutshell. Work, bed, everything. The words hit like a sucker punch, and the kitchen went deathly silent, except for the hum of the fridge. Clara laughed again, clearly pleased with herself, and strutted off to bed, leaving Alex alone with his coffee and a growing rage he didn't know he had. He stared at the table, his hand trembling around the mug. Little man? Tiny performance. It wasn't just an insult, it felt like a declaration of war. Clara had no clue, but she just ignited something. Alex wasn't a yeller, nor was he a fighter. But he was a thinker. And right then, with her laughter still echoing in his ears, he decided she would pay. Not with yelling or breaking things. No, he'd be smarter than that. He drained his mug, the burn fueling a plan. Clara thought she had the upper hand, but Alex was about to rewrite the game. He wasn't the type to snap and start throwing things around. He'd watched enough reality TV to know that only worked when you had a camera crew and a spray tan. After Clara's jab about his little man, tiny performance, he went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes dogs tilt their heads and wives wonder if something's off. But Clara was too busy admiring herself in the mirror to notice. That night, while Clara snored upstairs, probably dreaming of corner offices and Trevor's stupid Tesla, Alex sat on the couch, nursing a warm beer and plotting like a suburban Machiavelli. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was done. And if Clara wanted to play dirty, he'd play dirtier. Quietly, of course, because yelling was for amateurs. First, he needed information. Clara's phone was his ticket, but she treated it like it was the crown jewels. Luckily, Clara had the memory of a goldfish when it came to passwords. Alex had once seen her type password into her laptop, and sure enough, it worked on her phone, too. Rookie move, Clara. He scrolled through her texts, and bingo, there was Trevor. The messages were a disgusting mix of "you're a goddess" and winky faces. Who even still uses winky faces? There were selfies too, Clara in a low-cut top, Trevor flexing like he invented muscles. Alex gagged, but kept scrolling. Then, he found it. A thread where Clara bragged about manipulating a sales report to get a promotion. They'll never check, she typed. Oh, they'll check now, Alex muttered. But he didn't stop there. He turned into a one-man spy agency, fueled by spite and instant coffee. He recorded her late-night calls, her voice dripping with mockery as she tore into coworkers, him, even the mailman. Does he think I care about his stupid dog stories? She'd scoffed. He snapped photos of her hiding takeout containers under the couch cushions, as though he wouldn't notice the smell. Petty? Sure. But it felt good. It wasn't just about getting back at Clara anymore. No, Alex had hit the jackpot when he found her work laptop left open one night after too much Pinot. That was when he discovered emails proving her so-called genius campaign had been half-stolen from an intern. Clara wasn't just a jerk. She was a fraud. Alex's plan suddenly came into focus. He'd send everything, texts, recordings, emails, straight to her boss, and anyone else who'd listen. Anonymously, of course. He wasn't about to let her turn him into the star of her revenge drama. He could already picture her face when it hit. Red, blotchy, mascara running like the worst rom-com. Little man. Huh? He smirked to himself, saving the files to a USB stick he'd labeled Freedom. Clara thought she'd crushed him, but Alex was busy building a wrecking ball. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about justice. And maybe just a little bit about getting the last laugh. Alex had his ammunition locked and loaded, texts, recordings, emails, and even the photo of Clara hiding greasy takeout boxes under the couch cushions like a raccoon with a side hustle. He wasn't just seeking revenge, he wanted her whole smug world to implode. Step 1. Her job. Clara had clawed her way up the marketing ladder at that fancy downtown firm, and Alex knew exactly how to pull the rug out from under her stiletto heels. He packaged the evidence, her faked sales report, the stolen campaign ideas, the recordings of her mocking coworkers, and that bonus track of her belittling him. Then he emailed it anonymously to her boss, CCing half the department for good measure. To top it off, he threw in her voice, sneering, "Alex, he's just a placeholder with a pulse. Let them chew on that." But Trevor? Oh, Trevor was the cherry on top of this revenge sundae. Her phone had spilled all the beans, steamy text with Trevor, a sappy affair full of "you're my escape" and "you're my queen." The bomb dropped at the company's quarterly gala, a swanky event with an open bar and 2 mini tight ties. Clara strutted in, sparkling in a glittery dress that screamed, "Look at me," expecting accolades for her latest pitch. Instead, she was intercepted by Chandler, a grizzly bear of a man with a permanent scowl. He held up his phone like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. "Clara," he growled, "what's this garbage about you and Trevor?" The stolen ideas, the fake numbers, it all unraveled right there, in front of her colleagues, who were now whispering behind their cocktails like they were watching a live Netflix special. The room went silent, and heads turned. Clara's face went from smug to scrambled egg in 2 seconds flat. I can explain," she stammered. But Chandler wasn't having it. "You're done," he barked. "Pack your desk." Then he spun around toward Trevor, who'd been hanging by the punch bowl, grinning like a dope. "Sir," Trevor started, but was quickly cut off. "You're out too, Romeo? This isn't a dating app." Trevor's jaw dropped. The drama unfolded as he sank to his knees, clasping his hands like a kid begging for candy. "Please, Mr. Chandler, don't fire me. My Tesla's on a loan. I'll lose it. I'm 3 payments behind already." The crowd gasped, then snickered. "A Tesla? In this economy?" one of the onlookers muttered. Clara glared, realizing she'd hitch her wagon to a guy who couldn't even finance his own swagger. But the show wasn't over. 2 women, Charlotte from HR and Jen from accounting, stormed up, their faces thunderous. "You creep," Charlotte shrieked, pointing a finger at Trevor. "You told me I was your queen last month." Jen chimed in, "And me at the Christmas party, you slyball." Fists waved, purses swung, and Trevor cowered as the gala turned into a slapstick showdown. Clara blinked, dumbfounded. Her lover boy was a serial sweet-talker, and she had no idea. Chandler roared, "Enough. You're all a circus," and stormed off, leaving Clara jobless and Trevor pleading, his protest ignored by a room that was now laughing too hard to care. Back home, Clara burst in, a mascara-streaked mess. "You did this," she wailed, hurling a coaster that bounced off the wall. Alex smirked, cool as ice. "Yes, who's the little one now?" he said, and strolled out, leaving her to stew in the wreckage she'd made of her own life. Alex didn't stick around to watch her meltdown. Why bother when he'd already enjoyed the show via email? After his little "guess who's the little one now" mic drop line, he grabbed his duffel bag and headed to a buddy's spare room across town. It wasn't a mansion, just a lumpy couch and a mini fridge, but it smelled like freedom, cheap beer, and zero nagging. Clara's calls started flooding his phone, 10 missed, then 20, but Alex let them buzz like flies he couldn't be bothered to swat. He'd won, and winners don't take victory laps in quicksand. He didn't waste time wallowing. First order of business, a gym membership. Not because he was aiming to get ripped, no, he wasn't auditioning for Magic Mike, but to sweat out the last 5 years of Clara's constant snark. He trudged through treadmill sessions, a grin tugging at his lips as he thought about how Clara would scoff at his tiny performance now. Work even started to look up. His boss, Mark, a gruff guy who cared more about golf than people, noticed Alex's newfound energy and threw him a small raise. "Keep it up, kid," Mark grunted, which, for Mark, was practically a love letter. Alex even bought himself a new shirt. Nothing fancy, just a crisp button-down that didn't scream, "I gave up in 2018. Take that, Clara and her. You haven't earned an upgrade yet, jab." Meanwhile, Clara's world of one crumbled faster than a stale cookie. The gossip from the gala spread quickly, her firing, Trevor's pleading, and the whole Tesla loan disaster. At work, she became radioactive. Her so-called friends ghosted her as if she'd borrowed their favorite shoes and lost them. Debt piled up, and those designer blazers weren't paying for themselves. Her last voicemail to Alex was a garbled mess. "You ruined me. You jerk." He listened, chuckled, and deleted it. Ruined? Nah, she'd built that house of cards herself. He'd just given it a little nudge. One crisp Saturday, Alex went for a walk by the river, on a day so clear and blue it seemed to be showing off. He pulled his wedding ring from his pocket. Dull, scratched, a relic of a life he'd long outgrown. "Little man, huh?" he muttered, then tossed the ring into the water. The satisfying plop echoed as it sank, and he didn't. Standing there, hands in his pockets, Alex watched the ripples fade away. As the sun dipped low, painting everything gold, Alex felt something he hadn't in years: lightness. Clara could keep her wreckage. He was done carrying it. Whistling a tune he didn't even know, he turned and walked away, a free man with a bad haircut and a damn good story. Oh, and by the way, Clara's firing wasn't the neat ending Alex had imagined. No, it was just the opening scene of her personal disaster movie. After the gala blow-up, her company didn't just sweep her fake sales report under the rug. They launched a full investigation. Think suits, clipboards, and zero tolerance for her mess. Turns out, Clara's genius numbers had cost them a client, and the higher-ups weren't about to absorb that loss. They slapped her with a $10,000 fine, a final gift for her creative accounting. Word spread quickly through the Chicago marketing scene. Clara was now known as a fraud with a side of drama. New job? Good luck. Her LinkedIn profile stayed as dusty as her dating profile. Recruiters saw her name and fled, like she was handing out free timeshares. Rewind a few years, and the picture was even uglier. Clara hadn't always been the queen of marketing in the early days of their marriage. Clara had spent her time riding Alex's coattails. Back then, he was the one bringing home the paycheck, slogging through his ink-selling job, while she took her time figuring things out on his dime. She played the doting wife role perfectly, baking crooked cookies, laughing at his terrible jokes, and fluttering her lashes like she was the leading lady in a rom-com. Alex fell for it completely. But beneath that sweet exterior, ambition was simmering. Once Clara landed her marketing job, after years of relying on him, she underwent a transformation. The cookies stopped. The cooing turned to cackling. And with each passing day, she jabbed at him. Little man, tiny performance, printer boy. It wasn't playful teasing anymore. It was a power trip. And Alex? He was her punching bag. The lesson? Don't build your empire on someone else's back, especially if you're planning to knock them off the ladder once you reach the top. Clara's story is a warning. Arrogance can write checks that humility has to cash. Psychologically, she was a classic narcissist with a twist. She was the queen bee with a wounded ego, craving control and needing constant validation. When Alex was her ticket to success, she played the part of the supportive wife. Once she had her crown, she wielded it like a weapon. Her downfall? Overreach. She didn't just climb the ladder, she stomped on it, and gravity always finds a way to bring loudmouths down. Now, Alex is sipping coffee in his new life, while Clara's stuck trying to piece together her ruined career, scrambling to make payments. He's free, and she's trapped. Funny how the little man ended up standing tallest. Divorce didn't just free Alex from Clara's grip, it ignited something within him he didn't even know was there. At first, he reveled in the little victories, sleeping diagonally in a bed all to himself, eating pizza for breakfast without a lecture, and pocketing that raise from Mark. But the beige sedan life wasn't enough anymore. One day, as he scrolled through job boards with a beer in hand, an ad caught his eye. Creative director at a startup making quirky ads for craft beer brands. Better pay, cooler vibe, and absolutely no printer ink. He applied, nailed the interview, and was hired on the spot. Turns out, quiet guys can charm when they stop caring. He ditched his old job like a bad habit, and suddenly, Alex was brainstorming slogans over IPAs instead of refilling toner. Life tasted hoppy, and he liked it. But the glow-up wasn't just professional. Alex traded his faded polos for tailored jackets. Nothing flashy, but sharp enough to signal that he had his act together. He hit the gym, not to get a six-pack, but to add swagger. His haircut went from "please don't notice me" to "yeah, I'm that guy." A little skincare? Sure. And a watch that didn't scream, bought it at a gas station, completed the transformation. He wasn't a model, but he looked like a man who knew his worth, striding into rooms with a grin that said, "I've seen worse, and I'm still here. Why the change?" Back with Clara, Alex had been a doormat by design. Raised to be the peacekeeper, he avoided conflict and nodded through storms. Clara's jabs fed into his insecurities, convincing him that he didn't deserve better. He'd shrink, thinking that if he just tried harder, she'd soften. His departure cracked that shell wide open. Free from her shadow, he saw himself, not as a little man, but as someone with grit. The divorce wasn't a failure, it was graduation. Confidence bloomed from knowing he'd survived her and didn't need her validation. He had been a caterpillar, chewing through misery. Now he was a butterfly, with a wardrobe to match. One night, while sipping a stout at a bar with new coworkers, Alex caught his reflection, tanned, sharp, and alive. A woman across the room smiled at him. He smiled back, no hesitation. Clara's ghost didn't haunt him anymore. He was Alex 2.0, not loud, but steady. Quiet strength, not quiet surrender. And damn, it felt good. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.